Hi there everyone. Welcome to Kolb Nature Center in Hollywood, Florida. We are just south of Fort Lauderdale here, right next to the beach. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 86 degrees outside. It's a beautiful day. We're going to take you across a boardwalk here, through a mangrove forest, and a quick walking trail as well. Here we are at the entrance. And while we're here, we're going to be pointing out the prominent animal and plant species that we see in a mangrove forest here in South Florida, including some of the butterfly species here. Some of the most common species here are going to be the zebra longwing, the Julia butterfly. We might see a mangrove skipper out there as well. So let's head inside here. Looks like we have a couple examples of the prominent plant species out here. Right over here, we have a sea grape. Sea grape are found basically all over the coastline. They're one of the major tree species here. They border the coast, and this doesn't have a ton of it, but on the leaves, on the edges, you'll see some of them are kind of degraded or brown, and some of that would be from salt spray from the water. It is salty water here in the mangrove forest, so that does affect the plant species that surround it. Now over here, we have a cabbage palm, and this is actually the state tree of Florida. You see these guys all over, very recognizable, the big palm trees. Here we are at the entrance. Now, as we go through here, we're going to be seeing both water and ground on the side. We are right next to the coastline. And we'll head over to the first trail here. Here we are at the top of the observation tower here at Kolb Nature Center. And you can get a good look here at the entire preserve. And this thing stretches for a long way. If you look out this way, the Atlantic Ocean is straight out ahead. We're not quite on the coastline, but we are nearby. We're going to make our way down to that water over there, and I'll show you through the mangrove forest here. Now, mangroves are different species of trees that grow in salt water along the coastline, and you'll find them in tropical areas all over the world, and I'll discuss later on why mangroves are just so vital to their ecosystem. So we'll head down now and get going on the trail here. All right, here we are at the start of the trail. Get going on the boardwalk. Now, this area is a wetland, which is characterized by having plants that emerge from the water. You can see here, we have that. These are red mangroves, one of the 3 species of mangroves that you'll find here. We have red, black, and white mangroves here. Now, within wetland areas, there are swamps, marshes, bogs, and hammocks. But today we're going to be focusing on the swamp environment. Swamps are a wetland that are dominated by trees, and of course, mangroves are trees, making this preserve a swamp. Now you can see on the observation tower how far away from the actual ocean we are, but the water stretches all the way inland and continues inland all the way to the Everglades. Now, we did just have a lot of rain in the past week, so this is completely covered in water. And I was here about 2 weeks ago. This was all mud with very little groundwater because it had been dry for a couple of days. So you can see how much just a couple days of rain here in South Florida can affect the local ecosystem. So here we have a good look at a red mangrove. You can see one of the things that characterizes these red mangroves is these prop roots that extend down into the water. They look just like a bunch of branches down at the bottom of the tree here, but they are actually roots that extend out. And one of the interesting things about these mangroves is because they are in salt water, they have to deal with that salt somehow. And one of the ways they do it is through something called a sacrificial leaf. And if we look here, every so often in the tree, you'll see a branch with this really, oh, there it goes. We'll find another one. Down here, this really yellow, torn up leaf. That is because the mangrove will basically funnel all the salt that is taking up into these individual leaves. And you can see they break off very easily because they are basically dead. And this is just one of the ways that they deal with this high salt content. So right down here, we have a white mangrove. And what I've done is I've taken one leaf off of the mangrove to show you how to distinguish these from the others. Right at the top here above the leaf, you can see two little notches on the stem. And those are called nectaries. And that is the white mangrove's way of expelling salt. What these do is they are glands and they'll expel salt basically onto the leaf. The back of this leaf has a very waxy surface, and that's because it has salt on it that has been expelled from the mangrove. So that is the major way to tell apart the white mangrove from the others. Now down here, normally this area is just muddy, and we would see a lot of holes in the ground. And those holes belong to fiddler crabs. They're their burrows down here. We're not going to see any today because it's so wet, but normally we would see tons of these crabs everywhere. They're one of the most common species in this environment, and they're characterized by having one really large claw, much bigger than the others, on the males. And that is primarily used for sexual selection during mating. What will happen is two males competing for a female will go up and compare the size of their one big claw, and whoever has the larger claw basically wins. Now, like I said, normally we would see a ton of these guys, but it is too wet today, so we won't be seeing any fiddler crabs. Alright, so as we continue on here, we'll talk about some of the things that distinguish mangroves. Like I said, we have three species here, the red, black, and white mangroves. And the two main things that distinguish these mangroves are that they survive in hypersaline water, or this salty water that you can see around us. As well, instead of seeds, they disperse something called propagules, which we can see here from the red mangrove are these large cigar-shaped, they kind of function like seeds though. Basically the mangrove will drop these down, they'll float along in the water, and eventually they'll settle in, stick in upright, and when they settle in, they will root out and grow a new mangrove. And these things are all over because the mangroves just drop them off. Now the propagules will look different for each species. That one was for a red mangrove. The black mangrove will have much smaller ones that are round and they kind of open up like a book. They have these little different sections inside that kind of fold out. Now, one way the mangrove species are distributed is the distance to the water. The red mangroves are typically found closest to the water, right on the water's edge. And as you move back, you'll get black mangroves, and then further inland, you'll find the white mangroves that are much more tree-like than the others. Now, as we approach the coastline, the water begins to get deeper, and we approach what is called an estuary. These areas represent the boundary between salt water from the ocean and fresh water from inland. And that mix of both fresh and salt water is called brackish water. So this is all brackish water throughout the mangrove forest and in this estuary here. Now, estuaries are vital ecosystems for countless species here. They're really commonly used as a nursing ground for many juvenile fishes, as well as a hunting area for many predators, namely birds. We have a lot of birds here, diving birds. So they'll dive down into the water out here and catch fish. Or we'll also find birds that sit by the water's edge and just wait for a meal to swim by. These are called wading birds. Now, if we are able to see one of these species out here, such as a heron we have here, we'll see that they have long, pointy beaks. That makes it real easy for them to just make a quick jab into the water and catch your fish, or sometimes even impale them. I don't see any at the moment, but normally we'll have several bird species that perch up on top of these mangroves here. We'll continue walking here through the water. And you can see how some of these floating propagules from the red mangroves have settled down and started these little island clusters of red mangroves out here. Like I mentioned, these red mangroves are going to be the ones closest to the water, right on the water's edge here. Now, as the water is a bit shallower here, you can see some light shining through, and it really highlights how these juvenile fish can use this area as a nursery. When they're young and they can't quite fend for themselves totally, there's tons of hiding spots among these red mangroves. Lots of shade, plenty of space to hide. So it's a vital spot for them. Now, among these red mangrove prop roots, you can see some that are sticking straight up out of the water. They're not quite as tall and they're a little thinner. Those are from black mangroves. Those are called nematophores. Now, what these do is they're basically a way of aerating the roots for the black mangroves. This is one of the easy ways to identify the different species. The red mangroves will have these prop roots, and the black mangroves will have those nematophores sticking straight up out of the water. Here we are again at the water's edge. Go out further that way. It just gets deeper. We may find several different species out there. Some larger fish as it gets deeper. We might find manatees out here as well. Estuaries are something that manatees frequent. They are kind of a secluded area from the open water, and somewhere they can just kind of swim by and rest, you know. Unlikely we'll see one here, but occasionally they're out there. This is the end of this trail. We'll head back to the main area. There is a short walking trail that I'll take you guys on, and after that we'll be all done with the nature center. I'll see you at the next trail. Alright, so here we are at the start of the last trail. And right here, we have a much better view of the nematophores for the black mangroves. Now remember, these aerate the roots for the black mangroves, and you can see they just stick straight up out of the ground here. The water is much lower over here. You can get a better view. You can see them compared to the red mangrove prop roots right behind them. And continue on this trail here. Now, if you hear that loud clicking sound, that's a cicada. And many people know cicadas for having the long brood periods. However, there are some species that are found all year round. So I wanted to discuss the importance of the mangrove ecosystems. Mangrove forests serve numerous functions within the ecosystem, the first of which I mentioned earlier, being a nursing ground for many fish species. Many of these species live on the local coral reefs here, which of course are vital to protect. They begin their lives here, so it's important that this ecosystem remains viable. Thankfully, mangrove forests hold a diverse and dense community of species, allowing for a productive and healthy environment. The next function that mangrove forests serve is trapping runoff from local urban areas. Mangroves serve as an excellent filtration system for the environment before anything really reaches the ocean. They significantly reduce the amount of pollutants from runoff that make it into the local ecosystem here. The final major function of mangroves is serving as a natural barrier against storms. Here in South Florida, we get storms for most of the year, getting especially bad during hurricane season, of course. The dense layout of mangroves naturally protects the inland where people live. You know, it's all inhabited. There's high tides and high winds. Mangrove protects us from potential flooding as well. The importance of these mangrove communities cannot be understated, and that's my main goal of making this video. Educating the public can bring needed awareness to the threats that mangroves face. Coastal development is destroying these environments and cascading down to the species that inhabit them. Local reserves such as the Kolb Nature Center here serve vital roles in preserving these quickly disappearing ecosystems. Mangroves are something that really need to be protected. Although they're not found everywhere, where they are found, they are super important. Now this is just about the end of the trail here. So we're going to wrap it up. My name is Anthony Hernandez with Nova Southeastern University. I hope you enjoyed this walk, and thank you for watching.